Ladies and gents, in this video we will implement a custom build task using UI5 tooling's Node API. So I begin with creating a new folder under my root folder of my project, named lib, and inside I create another folder named tasks to hold my custom tasks, and inside I will create a new file named transpile-babel.js. We are going to create a custom task which will use the Babel library to compile our next generation JavaScript code so that we can use ES6 functionalities for our project. First we have to install Babel and some plugins for it, of course, so I open a new terminal and say npm i -save-dev, and I begin by babel/core, next a plugin babel/plugin proposal object rest spread. It's a mouthful. Another one at babel/plugin transform destructuring. Another one at babel/plugin transform spread, and lastly at babel/preset-env. Okay, now we're all set with our dependencies. Let's check. They're all here, and since we are in package.json, I will create two scripts here. First is start, and I will simply call UI5 serve-o, and next I will call build, and we will simply run UI5 build. Now let's go to our custom task code. First we need to import Babel. So import Babel from at Babel core. Now we can use this import syntax and all ES6 functionalities with UI5 tooling version 3, but with version 2 and lower you need to use the require syntax. But one change we need to do for the import syntax is we again need to go to package.json and add another property here, which is type, and the value is module. Now in here we can export a default function from our file, so we say export default function. Actually it's an async function, so export default async function, and it's not a named function, and by default we get a few parameters here which we can check from the official documentation. We scroll down here, you see it has a huge signature and we get a lot of parameters for this function, but we are interested in only two. First one being the workspace. The second one is a logger instance just for logging purposes. Now inside our function, let's return workspace dot by glob, and in here we pass in an array of wildcards to indicate which files we want to access. So we begin by all JS files /***.js, and we also want to exclude any future test files, so we say !**qunit.js. so this is assuming all the test files will be named something qunit.js. Now this is going to return a promise, so we will listen to it, and then it's going to return us all the resources that match these wildcards here. So we are expecting some JavaScript files which might contain ES6 syntax. So we say resources, and in our callback function we return another promise, actually multiple promises, so it's promise.all. And to create all our promises, we're going to map over all the resources that we got from the byGlobe function. So we say resources.map. So we get a single resource instance, and here we say resource and call the getString method on the resource. So we get the JavaScript code as a string, which also returns a promise. So we again listen to it. We say then value. Now we have the string value. Let's log an info message to the console at this stage and say transpiling file resource dot get path. So we know which file we are transpiling. And now let's do the transpile itself and return it. So we say return Babel dot transform async. Okay, that looks like it. And then we first pass in the string value and then some options. We say source maps, let's set to false, we don't need them. Should be a capital M here with the source maps. Next is the presets. We only have one that we installed, which is at Babel /preset-env. And next we need the plugins. And this is going to be an array of arrays. This is just the syntax of Babel plugins. So we begin by, actually let me copy it from package.json, it's easier. Let's begin by object rest spread. So the first element of the array is the package of the plugin itself, and then we pass in an object for some configuration, and we say lose true and use built-ins also true. Next one, I will just copy this. Next one is destructuring. Let's get it. And we again use the same options. And lastly, we have transform spread. And for this one, we only pass in lose true. So where does this end, the transpile? Let's see. Okay, here is the transform. So this will, like I said, return a promise. So we say then we get the result, which is the transpiled code. Then we say resource dot set string this time and pass in the result of the transpile and the code property. So we basically replace the old code with the transpiled code here, and then we save it in the workspace. So we say workspace dot write resource. Okay, that's it, and if I didn't make any mistakes, it should work. But first, of course, we have to tell UI5 tooling that we have a custom task here, so it should be aware. So we go to our UI5.yaml file, scroll all the way down, and since this is a build task, we say builder and custom tasks, and we begin with the name property. We give it a name, let's say transpile Babel, and we need to specify the before task property to indicate when it should run. And as you remember, the last task by default is generate component preload. Let's use that, since when we come to this stage, all our files have been generated anyway. And then we also need a separate configuration for our task. So we use 3 dashes so that we can include it in the same YAML file here. Let's start with the command actually. Let's say Babel task configuration. And we begin with spec version, as we always do for our YAML files. And it has to be the same spec version as this original file, so keep that in mind. Next we say kind extension, so it's a build extension. Another property type is task, and for metadata the name is transpile Babel. It has to match this name here, so I will copy it. And we have a task property here, and we need to specify the path to our custom code in this file basically. So it's under lib tasks slash transpile dash babel.js. Now let's clear our terminal, fingers crossed, and npm run build. Okay, already have an error. Babel.transform async is not a function. Let's see. Import Babel from Babel core. Okay. Babel.transform async. Okay, I have a typo. Let's run again. Okay, I still have a typo, I believe. Async. Okay. Well, English is my second language, so excuses. Okay, another error, module not found. Let's see, Babel core. Let's clear our terminal and run the build again. Okay, this looks much better. Now we can see all these standard build tasks, and now we see 4 more here that we logged right here with log.info. So we should have 4 files, 4 JavaScript files that has been transpiled by Babel. Now we won't see any differences because we actually have no ES6 code in our project. So let's go ahead and introduce some. Let's go to our app controller here, and instead of this invocation, let's use the shorthand function definition like this. And instead of var here, let's make it a const. Let's save. And we build again. Now let's check our dist folder. And if we check app-debug.controller, we can see that we no longer have the const here, or the function invocation is as it was before. So now we can safely use all ES6 features in our project. Now one more thing has been introduced with UI5 tooling version 3. Let's also check that. When we create a custom build task using the Node API, we might have some dependencies that our custom task should have access to. And if we do not export a second function here, UI5 tooling is going to assume that our task does not need any dependencies. But if that's the case, we again check the documentation. We have another named function that we can export, again a big one. So I will just copy it. It has to be named determine required dependencies. And here's a nice example. Actually, the available dependencies is a JavaScript set. So we might have the core library, M library, and some custom library. And we can filter it out so that the only dependency we need is our custom lib. So it's not going to load all the other libraries, which is going to be faster. Like I said, if we don't export anything, which is the default behavior, it's not going to load any dependencies. But just for demonstration purposes, I will put this function here anyway, and I will return a new empty set here, which is the same thing as not exporting this function at all. Okay, so that would be it for this video, and I hope to see you in the next one.